Hey everyone, welcome to my channel. My apologies for the long hiatus. It turns out that if you work full-time and you take 2 grad school engineering courses, that you don't even have time to breathe, let alone make YouTube videos. So anyway, here we are. Thank you for being here. In this video I hope to go over all the mechanical, basically everything I did to completely make this 240D run like new again, and feel like new. And I learned a lot on the way, a lot of things I hadn't read on the internet and the forums and seen on YouTube yet, so hopefully these tips and tricks will be educational for you. We're going to start with the engine, everything I did with the engine, then the drivetrain, and then just a bit of kind of body interior stuff I did too. So yeah, let's get started. Alright, so the first thing I did was an oil change. Fairly easy on this car. You know, you loosen the cap, drain the oil to the plug, then take these 2 bolts off, take the filter out, replace filter, and that's pretty much it. You check the oil level when the engine's cold, not running, and it's about, I'll put it here, but I believe it's 2 quarts between the 2 levels on the stick. Good to know. Alright, the next thing I did was a valve adjustment. I have a video of that, which I'll share here. Alright guys, so I've done a few of these already, kind of getting a feel for it. Exhaust valves are pretty easy, you know, those are 12 thousandths of an inch, but the intake valves, being 4 thousandths of an inch, are very sensitive. So like right now, we're good for the most part, yeah, good resistance. I want it to be a little tight because I'm using a 5 thousandths gauge when the spec is 4 thousandths, so I want it to be pretty tight. But now if I just barely loosen that, now it won't go in at all. So if you barely move this just a few degrees, it'll really screw up your results. So it's kind of a delicate procedure. So we're good now. And a good way to think about this is you want to locate the top nut relative to the bottom one. So once you get them loose, and you loosen them by putting the wrenches together, moving them towards each other, assuming you have bottom one on the right, top one on the left. So you loosen it by pressing them together. And then you just want to locate the top nut relative to the bottom nut. So you know, it's a right-hand thread, just a normal thread. So if you loosen it, it'll raise up and close that clearance. If you tighten it, it'll open it and increase that clearance. So typically these valves will loosen up over time. The gap will get bigger. So you want to loosen the top nut to bring that clearance closer and get your, you know, 4 thousandths or 12 thousandths, depending on what you're doing. So anyway, once you're good, little loose. There we go. Then you want to push these apart. So hold the top nut right where it is, and you want to loosen essentially the bottom nut, or raise it up, if that makes sense. And getting these wrenches on is kind of tricky. I kind of have to go at an angle downwards to really get them on there good. And of course, check it again as you tighten it. Yep, see this one? So I want to tighten it a little bit to get that to go in. Perfect. And now I want to loosen the bottom nut in order to tighten it. And hold the top nut exactly where it is. Yeah, you gotta be really careful not to move that top nut. So to loosen, bring them together. Check it. Tighten. Check it. There we go. Keep that top nut still. Loosen the bottom one. There we go. Perfect. Okay. I'm not sure what the exact torque is on these, but you know, I like to get them pretty tight. Cool. And then just do that, you know. Oops. Just do that 8 more times or whatever. Easy, right? After that, I did a complete belt replacement. The belts on this car were very, very old. So on mine, there were 3 belts. One for the AC compressor, which used to sit right here. But I removed it to save weight, and I don't care about air conditioning. You know, the alternator and fan belt, and then the power steering belt. Fairly straightforward. In terms of tips for the power steering pump, I would recommend just taking this whole pulley off. That's what I did. That made it a lot easier to get the new belt on, because it's like there's like a conical section that this pulley fits on. So once you get the belt on there, you can kind of just fit the pulley back onto the little bracket, tighten it, and then just tighten it back on. That makes it easier. It did take a lot of force to get this pulley off. It took a big hammer and a crowbar to get it off, but anyway, that's adjusted via this bolt right here and this tensioner. So as always with any pulley component, you usually want to loosen, you know, all the bolts that hold the pump on. In this case it would be that one, and this one, 3 of them. And then yeah, you just tighten this to increase or decrease the tension. Next was the alternator. Now this one has a really cool design, I think. Same deal, loosen 1 nut, 2 nut, and then there's another on the bottom. You loosen those, and then you can decrease the tension. Let's see if I can get you in here with this cool looking, really clever, I think, tensioner. And one thing I should note, that when you are tightening this, don't put all the tension on this nut. I would actually recommend getting in there with your hand and pulling up on it and then tightening it, just so you don't strip these little teeth on there. One thing too to note when you're doing the whole pulley system is you want to remove the fan. That's the first thing you want to do. And there's four bolts on the front. You really only need to take 3 of them off, if I remember right. No, you need to take all 4 off. And if you have a ratcheting open end wrench or a ratcheting box end wrench, that's the way to go. That saved my life on this one. So yeah, you need to take that off so you can get to everything else. This radiator shroud comes off super easy. You do have to take the fan off first. So take the fan off, and then all this does is just come off of these clips and it comes right out. What else did I do? I did the thermostat. Thermostat was easy. Just 1, 2, 3 bolts and a crowbar in here. Pop that off. New thermostat in there. Works great. I did the engine mounts, which this side, passenger side, extremely easy. Really, really easy. Essentially, there's a bolt on the bottom and then 2 bolts on the top. So 2 bolts on the top and then 1 bolt on the bottom. It comes out like right in there. Passenger side was easy. The driver side, not so much. So same deal. Bolt on the bottom, bolt on the 2 bolts on the side. But the bolt on the side over here is pretty much impossible to get to because of this heat shield and the engine mount itself, the arm of it. So what I ended up doing was I got a Allen socket, stuck it in the Allen bolt. It's right under this heat shield right here, and then I used an adjustable wrench to hook onto the socket and turn it that way because you have no room under there. Yeah, changing this one was a total pain in the ass. Of course, you want to raise the engine up as well while you're doing that. Let's see, other than that, I did have the brakes flushed. It's sort of related. Air filter, whatever. Just undo these guys. It's 4 of them. Undo the wing nut and top. Bam, there's your air filter. Easy peasy. The one upgrade I did was the glow plugs. You can see these are brand new. The stock glow plugs are the loop type, and they're all in series. So if one of them goes bad, none of them work. These are the new pencil types, and they're great because 1, they're more efficient, and 2, if one of them goes out, at least the other 3 will work. I bought the kit off of Mercedes Source. I'll link it below, but essentially you get a starter solenoid and a fuse, and you hook this up to a switch in the dash, and so that way you can control how long the circuit's closed for. I did the fuel filter. That's fairly straightforward, both of them. I did do the primer pump, also extremely easy. There's just a nut right here. When you loosen it, put the new one in. No drama there. What else did I do? Oh yeah, you like my so the air conditioning compressor did bolt up right here, but weirdly when I took this bolt off, oil started coming out, and when I took that bolt off, coolant started coming out. So I rigged up a fun thing with some old sockets I had laying around to hold that in place. I did replace this gasket for the vacuum pump. That was also extremely easy. There's like 10, I think, Allen bolts that go all the way around it. Loosen them, pop the thing off, put the new gasket on, put the thing back on. One thing I did learn doing that is you might have to rotate the engine to get this to fit back on, because otherwise the pump will kind of interfere with it. And to do that, anytime you want to rotate the engine, you do that with the valve adjustment as well. I'd recommend just get a big honking crescent wrench and stick it on this power steering pump. And if your belt's tight enough, it'll turn the whole engine. Always go clockwise. That's a big thing to remember. Always go clockwise. Along with the fuel filters and some of the lines, I also did a complete overhaul of the fuel screen and the fuel lines at the tank. When I drove this back from Las Cruces, I got 14 miles per gallon, which, I mean, it's tiny. Why? So yeah, I had a really bad fuel leak, turns out. So I had to redo all the lines. I went ahead and pulled the screen, did that. In terms of that was fairly easy as well. Just make sure you have a drain tank. I've pulled 2 fuel screens on these old Mercedes so far, and both of them have come off with just a 17 millimeter socket. So before you go buy that big frickin' honkin' socket to take off the whole fuel screen, try the 17 first, because that's the size of the nut that the fuel fitting fits into. But yeah, so you just drop that, put a new one in, hook all the fuel lines up with some hose clamps, and that's pretty much it. So it's been running great ever since. So let's move on to the drivetrain. Okay, so I'll cut in some video I took while I was doing this whole job. So the first thing I noticed that was wrong with this were the shifter bushings. Were really shot. I mean, this thing was just rattling and you could hear metal on metal. It was not good. So I replaced those. Those are fairly easy. I'd really recommend buying the special tool that Kent Bergsma offers. You can probably do it with needle nose, but man, that tool makes it way easier. I'll link that. Other than that, pair of just a standard flathead screwdriver is all you need to take off the clips. One note, when you do that, make sure to remember which shift rods go where. I forgot to do that, so I had to look it up online afterwards. So I'd recommend just maybe coloring it with a paint pen if you have one of those or whatever. And while I was under there, I discovered that I didn't have a carrier bearing anymore. The whole drive shaft was just all loosey-goosey. So anyway, I took it to the shop on base and did that. I also did the flex discs because you need to remove the whole drive shaft to replace the carrier bearing. So while you're at it, you might as well do the flex discs. I also did the transmission mount, which was extremely easy. With that one, just some bolts, if I remember right. Flex discs, top tip with those, make sure you can put the car in a lift because it makes it a lot easier. And then also make sure that the rear wheels are free, because you can't get a wrench up to the top bolts really. You have to do the bottom ones. So you take off the bottom bolts on the bottom flex discs, rotate the whole drive shaft, do the next set, rotate the whole drive shaft. You know what I mean? So you have to have the rear wheels free to rotate. That was, it wasn't that difficult. It just took a while. A lot of bolts, a lot of dirt and shit under there. But yeah, once I did it, it improved. It reduced a lot of the vibration in the driveline, which was really nice. For the actual carrier bearing replacement, I'll link Kent's kit. Instructions were good. It has everything you need. It is sort of complex, and you will need a shop desk vise. And yeah. And then last thing I did in terms of drivetrain was the transmission fluid change and the differential fluid change. Transmission, extremely easy. There's 2 big Allen set screws essentially, and you take the top one off. Make sure to do that first because one, that allows the fluid to flow out, and also if you can't get the bottom one off, or if you can get the bottom one off but you can't get the top one off, then you're screwed because you can't put more fluid in the transmission. So always take the top one off first, then take the bottom one off, let it all drain out, put the bottom one back in, put new fluid in it. I used Redline synthetic, worked pretty well. I didn't notice big difference in shift quality, but so lovey. And then differential, same thing. 2 Allen set screws, top one off, bottom one off, flush it, bottom one, top one. Pretty straightforward. Yeah, And so with that, let's move on to the little bits of body and interior work I did. So one important thing to note is this little guy right here. Now, I didn't pay much attention to this when I had my 300 SD because it didn't work. But it actually does work in this car, and it's really important, at least for a 240D. This is your idle adjustment. And so what I found is when you first start the car, I like to put, you know, a little bit of pressure on the throttle pedal, so you're not putting all the pressure on this cable. So you just put in the throttle a little bit, and then turn this counterclockwise. I don't know, it depends on how cold it is outside, but I can usually get away with 90, 120 degrees, something like that. And then after the car warms up, you can reset it back to where it was. Now, to adjust that, it's fairly easy. It all comes down to this cable right here. So, if you can see, there is a screw that tightens onto the cable. So what you want to do is you want to back this off all the way so that this is taut, which is just loosening this and loosening this. So this is out as far as you can get it, and then tightening this, and you're basically just increasing the tension in this so that when you turn the knob it actually does something. And so all that does is it increases the idle position of the throttle. And that's it. Make sure to keep these lubricated as well, these little doodlies. Next thing I did was sorry.
Aspen, what are you doing up there? What are you doing up there, Aspen? Yeah? You're cute.
So, next thing I did was I replaced this. Fairly easy, just take the door panel off and there's 3 bolts and that's it. I lubricated the hinges. So the way you do that on these is you have to buy a special pin. And the pin fits into this little tiny like ball valve and just pushes grease into the fitting. And you'll know you're good when a little bit of grease comes out the bottom fitting. Another thing I did, and this is something I've never heard about on YouTube about these old Mercedes, is the importance of the door strikers. So this door barely closed. I mean, you really had to slam it, right? And so I took this out, I took the whole latch out, cleaned it, lubed it up, made sure everything was tightened right, and it still wouldn't close right, and I was losing my mind. So what I found out was that,
what are you doing? Yeah.
Sorry, she's really cute.
Yeah.
You have to replace these, because what happens is this little rubber bit right here, this little like half circle, will wear out. And what that does is that kind of creates a how do I describe it? It turns this just enough so that it'll hook up under here as it's supposed to. So you can order just these, or you can get the whole door striker. I just went ahead and got the whole door striker because it wasn't that expensive. So that's a top tip for doors, because now it's so beautiful.
Do you like it, Aspen? Do you like it?
And let's see, what else? Let me consult my notes because I forgot. Oh, the hubcaps. Yeah, 1 second. So, one thing I learned when I went on a short little road trip and I crossed over what do you call them? The rumble strips. After I crossed over the rumble strips because of construction, my hubcap fell off and screened into the median and bent a little bit. And I was very confused why that happened. So I want to show you guys how these hubcaps work. I had never seen anything on this either. Alright, so as you can see, I've replaced these clips. There should be 4 of them.
I only had 3. And there's an old style of these that has like a weird like plasticky foam material on them, and then that is what creates your contact with the wheel. And so on 2 of mine, there was no plastic left. It was just metal, and so that didn't really create a good fitment. So you can order these online, really cheap. Mercedes still makes them. To put them on, I'd recommend just getting a big pair of pliers, putting them on here, sticking this end first, squeezing this, and then just kind of like putting both of these in. If you really need to, you can bend these out a little and then bend them back after you get the clip on. But yeah, so fun fact about that.
All right, well, I think that was a pretty short and sweet video. Hope you found it educational. Kind of good for me too to kind of get back into the swing of things, how to, you know, make videos and be in front of a camera and stuff. So anyway, yeah, hope you found it educational. Thank you for watching. Like it, subscribe, you know, YouTube things. Yeah, hope to see you next time. Thanks for watching. Bye.